So I was talking to actually the retro pool guy on Twitter. Wasn't really talking to him, just kind of responded to something he said. But he was talking about how there was very little to look forward to in video games in this coming year of 2025. And the only thing he was really looking forward to was MLB The Show. Which, of course, sports games are terrible in my opinion. They don't match what the actual sport creates. Therefore, I can't enjoy them at all as a sports fan. But anyways, beyond that, he's talking about how there's like very little to look forward to in video games, etc. And I was thinking about that. I've talked about backlog gaming before and how we all end up with these huge backlogs of dozens or hundreds of games sometimes that we own or have access to or have intended to play and have never played. I myself have a shelf full of original Xbox and Xbox 360 games. Many of the 360 games I have played, but a lot of the original Xbox games are games I never had access to back in the day. But I've collected them, and there's a collectible aspect of it, not just, I wish to play these, but I want to collect them. I have, on my Xbox, I have games I've purchased digitally going all the way back to the 360, because, Xbox's store and backwards compatibility is second to none. But for probably 15 years worth or more of games, hundreds of them. And then there's games I currently own from current generation that I've bought on sale or that I have access to through Game Pass that I might have started and have never finished, but again, have always intended to. And it's just such an interesting concept that we never really had to deal with before. In the past, when people owned a games console, like unless they were just the most, the absolute most prolific gamer, when you owned a game console and you were buying physical copies of things, most people only bought a few games a year. There used to be a really big thing back in the beginning of the Xbox 360, the PS3, etc., that generation, where they talked about a games attachment, because it was a big deal to sell the console and then get as many games sold for the consoles, right? And Xbox 360 was averaging something like 6.5 or 7 games attachment per console, meaning there were people that were buying a lot of games for them, but that's not everybody. The average, though, person would buy a few games per year for their console. That was what you had access to, and you would get a lot out of that because you would play the game, you might replay the game, you'd look forward to the next thing, you'd end up shopping around, you'd buy that, you play that for a couple months. You might have a multiplayer game you played consistently, though, throughout that, so that's a little bit different. But still, nowadays, I think a lot of our dissatisfaction with gaming, yes, there's a lot of duds, there's a lot of stupid crap that goes on in the gaming industry, and a lot of, unfortunately, really good IPs that have gotten messed up over the years. Halo, for instance. But I think a lot of our dissatisfaction with the current gaming world is that we're not happy just picking out a couple really good games in a year and playing those. We want to have access to tons of really good games. But the majority of us are not actually playing tons of really good games or finishing tons of good games. So, do I think that the market is worse than it once was? Yeah. Do I think that the talent level and the saturation of mediocrity is there? Yeah. But that doesn't mean there isn't still a lot of great games out there to have access to. I'm super excited for Borderlands 4, Monster Hunter Wilds, and then, I would hope that maybe the new Fable game does turn out to be pretty good. Avowed looks like it could still be really good, and there will be games later in the year that come out, and smaller time stuff too. So I've grown to be pretty happy with a couple really good game releases, and then, having Xbox Game Pass, I have access to a lot of things to just kind of try out in the middle of it, right? So, yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with the whole games access thing. It's kind of like women in dating or people who have a full fridge. You're always going to go up and you're going to open that fridge and you're going to go, I don't know what I want to eat, because you have too many options available to you. And then so everything's going to kind of seem like, and you're going to close the fridge and walk away. When your fridge is mostly empty and you just got one or two things in there, you go, oh yeah, that sounds really good. You grab it and you walk away and you're satisfied. So I think that's a very similar situation we have when it comes to games access, backlogs and such. And the only way to kind of fix that is to start just being happy with a couple really good things and realizing you don't actually need 30 games throughout the year to enjoy your gaming experience. I meant to comment on this like at release, basically the week that released. I had a little bit of a holiday break there, I guess. But the new Superman trailer came out, and honestly, I think it looks fantastic. Every single one of these franchises, whether it's Batman, Superman, 007, whatever it is, they go through these iterations, reboots, new characters, new actors that play them, and a new look and vision. So people that are comparing this to Man of Steel, which is my favorite Superman to this point, Henry Cavill's incredible and he perfectly suited it. I actually still think that Ben Affleck very much suited Bruce Wayne Batman, but that whole series didn't get to take off like it could have. Either way, people are comparing the two, but I just don't see it. Like, it's you got to be ready for each new iteration of these characters to have a different look, a different vision, a different creative direction. And I think it looks really good. There's nothing modern weird about it so far. It looks like it captures the identity of and concepts that make Superman great. And it's not an origin story. Like, thank God. I'm so 100% over origin stories, and I'm very, 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 very glad and thankful that James Gunn is as well. Nobody needs to see Spider-Man as a teenager every single time. Nobody needs to see Batman's parents get killed every single time. Nobody needs to see Superman's ship landing from Krypton every single time. We know the origin of these characters. They've been around for like 100 years. They just jump us in somewhere to some situation and tell us what's going on with him. We can extrapolate the previous history of the character in this universe based on current interactions and what happened. Like, this is how we used to do movies. I much prefer this. Everything doesn't need to be the next origin story. So I did a video a couple years ago about James Gunn taking over the DC universe when it comes to the film universe and all that. And I'm glad I had the take I did. I've always liked James Gunn. I said that in that video. And when he took over, I knew that there would be changes that people wouldn't necessarily like or be comfortable with or whatever, but that's just how things go. DC needed this. And I think that this Superman movie will do really well. I think it'll do really well. And then whatever we decide to do with Batman, I'm interested to see that. Batman's by far my favorite superhero character. I really like The Batman, the Matt Reeves film, and look forward to the next one. That did get delayed. But this does also go into this thing about hype. I keep seeing people right after the release of the Superman trailers like, oh, I'm not here for hype, or like, I don't buy the hype, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what are you talking about, by the way? Hype? Like, are you talking about marketing? Because every film ever, every property, media property of any sort ever, has been marketed. That's how you know it exists, right? There's a trailer, there's an ad, there's something, a billboard somewhere, I don't know. Like, that's the only reason you know it exists. Marketing has to exist, otherwise you don't know stuff happens. So marketing is fine. It's a normal, in fact, most marketing itself is part of the entertainment. Now, do you mean hype as in people are excited for it? Well, that's really weird. I feel like most of the time when people are excited for something and I can see it and go, yeah, that's not trash. Like, I don't need other people's validation when it comes to a movie. I have had one time in the last 25 years or whatever that I've been going to see films, because like I don't count before that. That was like my parents choosing what I saw and all that. But since I've been able to choose for myself what movies and shows and all that I want to see, I have had one movie in total, and I've gone to the theater well over 1,000 times in that time frame. I have the ticket stubs for it. That did not live up to what I expected based on the trailers, right? I see a trailer, or I see a couple trailers, and I go, yep, that's going to be good. I'm going to see that in theater. Or, I don't think I'm going to pay to see that. And if I don't pay to see it, most of the time I don't really ever show much of an interest. That movie was The Village. And I actually really thoroughly enjoy M. Night Shyamalan's stories. Like the vast majority of his movies. I think he's actually a really good producer and creator. However, that one movie I saw the trailer for had an expectation of something completely different than what I got, and did not like it. Everything else I go into with excitement and fervor or whatever you want to call it because of having seen the marketing and seen the trailers and gone, based on my experience and what I'm observing in that, putting the pieces together and going, that's going to be cool. That's going to be awesome, and enjoying it. So I don't buy the hype either, but not in the way you're saying. I don't sit here and try to be like anti-hype, because that to me is just as much being controlled by the masses as going along with them, is doing something just because other people are excited about something. You do the opposite. Well, here we are at the end of the 2024 NFL regular season. Everything wraps up tonight with the Sunday night game, Lions versus Vikings. That will determine the number 1 seed in the NFC and basically the best team in the NFL. No, I do not count the Kansas City Chiefs. But everything else was either meaningless or wrapped up pretty quickly today. The Tampa Bay Bucks got their win. They're in the playoffs. Mike Evans got his 11th straight 1,000-yard receiving season. The Rams were already in the playoffs. The Chiefs were already in the playoffs. Like, a bunch of these teams were already in the playoffs, and they didn't really need to do anything more, so they rested their starters. So those teams lost. And then the teams that were playing were mostly like irrelevant in some kind of way. They were just playing for pride and for draft position and all those other things. So today was pretty boring when it came to football. I woke up and I was like, because I'm a Jags fan, but I also root for like the Bucks, and I root for like good stories. I've talked about this before. The teams that I've watched the most, the Bucks, just because they're like the NFC Florida team I like, but Baker Mayfield, great story. I like the Lions, Jared Goff and everybody up there. That's also a great story. That's fun. I will root for them if they go far as well, but not if it's against the Bucks or Rams. Then there's the Rams. I've rooted for the Rams in some way, shape, or form since '99. Basically, Kurt Warner is my favorite player of all time, and The Greatest Show on Turf was possibly the most entertaining thing to ever happen in the NFL with Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. That team was insane to watch. So anyways, I've always had a soft spot for the Rams, but without Kurt Warner and all them, I didn't necessarily actively root for them. But with Matthew Stafford going over there, I've always liked him. I'm very glad to see him win a Super Bowl. So with Stafford and the Rams making it, I'll root for them. With the Bucks making it, I'll root for them. And the Lions, I'll root for them wherever they end up, unless it's playing the Bucks or the Rams. But anyways, so for the most part, things were pretty boring today, and the talk was about draft position, and this team ruined their draft position by winning, and it's like, is that really what you're rooting for? Because first of all, number 1 pick doesn't really mean a whole lot. Top 5 picks don't even necessarily mean a lot, except you're going to pay more for a guy who might be a bigger bust, all this Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, all that kind of crap. Anybody who picks him, I think, is dumb. And so the Tennessee Titans are the number 1 pick in the draft. I would love to see them pick both of those guys. They won't pick, I don't know. It doesn't mean what it once did. There's no sure bets at number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. Some guys can show up and be fantastic. Others you're they're whatever. So I think that teams that are smart, they don't need to necessarily have a top 3 pick necessarily. And so your goal out there should always be to win your football game. I don't believe in this tanking for a draft position or whatever. Give your fans something to root for, and if your fans are rooting for you to lose to get draft position, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm rooting for the Jags to lose. I've been rooting for them to lose since week 3 though, because the organization's a mess, and unless they feel that on a certain level, they're not going to make the right changes. But I think that's different. I don't know. I think the New England Patriots, they have a franchise quarterback, so they're not trying to draft a quarterback number 1. There's a lot of pieces you can find throughout the draft without having to be the number 1 pick, things like that. So anyways, just wrapping up NFL regular season. It was a pretty fun year for the interesting teams. There was a lot of stuff I just didn't care about. There was the Jaguars being a mess, and it's whatever, they're done and over with. Let's fire Doug Peterson and move on. But yeah, the NFC is the much more exciting side. The Chargers are fun to watch too. Justin Herbert's been great, and Lad McConkey's been cool. Their defense has been good. Just that whole situation with Harbaugh over there has been kind of fun to watch. So I think it'll be an entertaining postseason. I don't think there's necessarily any flops that made the playoffs. All the teams that made the playoff, even the 7 seed, you got the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix has been great, fun to watch. So there's nobody in there that's really like, eh. I mean, I hate the Chiefs, obviously. Really hate the Chiefs. Don't care about the Baltimore Ravens. But the fact is none of these, like, even the Steelers, like, they earned their way in, weeks ago. So I can kind of see why stuff went weird for them. But overall, I think that both sides of the playoff picture are going to be fairly competitive and fun to watch. So let's wrap this up and go into the playoffs.